Hi, everyone. You're at No Kill in Motion. I'm here this week with Aubrie Kavanaugh from No Kill Huntsville, Shirley Marsh from Yes Biscuit, Alan Rosenberg from the New Jersey Animal Observer. I'm Davyd Smith from No Kill Colorado. We are talking about the rejection of potential adopters. There's been a couple of articles on this just recently in New York Times, New York Magazine, and Human Animal Support Services, Kristen, Hassen, which got a lot of attention. But it's happening out there. We talk about this on and off for years, I think, of the difficulty when people have difficulty adopting, right? We can't succeed without the general public. It's not actually possible, right? So if we don't like our constituency or market, whatever you want to call them, there's no way that we're going to succeed. And are we actually pushing adopters into the exact places that we're trying to get them to avoid, right? Breeders, whether it's responsible breeders, which I'm going to keep that in quotes. We can talk about that another day, or backyard breeders, or anything else, right? So, yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about here, but it is in the news right now. I wanted to bring it up. Let's see what's going on. Why don't we start with you, Aubrie? Rejection of potential adopters when shelters and rescues say no. What's happening out there?
I think it all boils down to an inherent distrust of the public. And I think that that also relates to how many shelters operate to begin with. Going back to our roots, which is the no-kill equation, and how it is that we keep animals alive in shelters and keep all healthy and treatable animals alive. A lot of shelters will say, well, we have to destroy animals because it's the fault of the irresponsible public. We don't want to have to do this, but we don't have any choice. So they're starting with the baseline of the public can't be trusted, and they're the enemy. And then you take that one step further, and when we're talking about adopting animals out, they carry that distrust to the adoption process and put up these arbitrary rules or guidelines that make it almost impossible. There are some shelters and, of course, rescue groups that would not adopt to me. And I like to think that I'm a great pet caregiver. I mean, the animals that we've had growing up all lived very long lives. The last two dogs we've had in our family lived to be 16. They had great lives. I hesitate to say spoiled rotten, although they probably were, but they would not adopt. Some places would not adopt to me because there were years when I didn't have a fully fenced yard. Now, our dogs were never outside unattended, but if you didn't have a fully fenced yard, no. Some places would reject me because I work full-time outside the home. Others would reject me because I'm over the age of 50. So it's just all of these little things where it's like they're looking for ways to avoid adopting to people, which is just completely counterproductive to the whole process of getting animals outside the building alive. And I know we've talked about CARE before, companions and animals for, I don't remember the exact acronym. I'll have to pull it up, but they have a video just about this.
You made me think of it again. We have to put up the video again.
Yeah, I'll have to put the video. It starts with all these people in a field, and it says, okay, if you're over this age, you can't adopt, and people walk away. If you have children, you can't adopt, and people walk away. And so they throw out all these arbitrary criteria. And then at the end of the day, what started with a group of a few dozen people, there might be 2 or 3 people left over. So, but this is really a real problem. It's going on all the time, and it's just completely counterproductive. Rather than trust people to have good intent, they are distrustful of people, and then that keeps animals from being adopted.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of the comments out there, and they're always about, well, you don't understand that, we want to get the perfect adopter, and I'm like, I don't know. I think you're all wonderful people on this panel here. I don't think you're the perfect adopter for a lot of pets, but I bet you're a great adopter for a lot of pets. I mean, perfect. What does that mean, right? Like, I look at Christine, my wife, and wonder, am I the perfect person? Perfect? That's a high bar, right? Anyway, so let's keep going. Shirley, what do you think? Rejection of potential adopters.
Well, it is a hot topic. As I've said before, blog, as soon as we try to bring this, somebody always comes in and says, you want us to give dogs to Michael Vick? Which no, nobody is saying give dogs to Michael Vick. But I think that when you look at how this affects shelter dogs, where shelter dogs are being killed for space or behavioral issues or whatever, here in the South, we have a lot of that. There are some all breed rescues up north who operate by pulling the dogs from shelters here in the South and bringing them up north to be adopted. Now, if you're making it harder for those dogs to get adopted by turning away potentially good adopters, then that means less shelter dogs being saved and the potential for more being killed here. So I think it's reasonable to say, without going to any extreme, we need to get dogs into homes. As you say, there aren't going to be necessarily perfect homes. What is perfect, we don't know, but homes where they're wanted and loved.
I always bring up the fact when I was fostering, because, you know, a rescue would be like, that person will let animals on the furniture, so we're going to reject them. Or whatever. They have these arbitrary reasons. And at the time, I had a pet food company, and I ate from every batch of my pet food. It was real food. That was what we were all about. And I became kind of a nutrition nut when it came to my pets. And if I held anyone to the standards of what I believe in, that I would have never let a foster go ever. But of course I couldn't hold them to that standard. It's like, if it's not neglectful or abusive, right? Those are two different things. Like you said, I'm not giving a dog to Michael Vick, or anyone close to that. I mean, obviously he's the extreme, but there's others in there, but outside of neglect and abuse, we need to get until every shelter says, oh yeah, no, we have more adopters than we need. No, you've got to find ways to get animals out of the shelter and not put up these huge barriers. Alan, please, you're next.
Yeah, I agree with Shirley and Aubrie. In a prior video we did, I talked about a couple studies on open adoption. So open adoptions are basically conversational adoptions where a shelter or rescue just has a conversation with someone, and it's open and helps build trust with the adopter, and you both have a conversation to see if the animal is a right match for the person. And then obviously in a conversation like that, if some huge red flag comes up, then obviously you wouldn't approve the adoption. And those studies prove that open adoptions were just as safe as any restrictive adoption process. The only time I'd ever accept restrictive adoptions if you're really dealing with the most severe behavior case dog, like a dog that had bites before or significant bites before, and you just need someone who knows what they're doing to manage the dog. And that kind of thing, you're going to be a little more careful. But for the vast majority of animals in shelters, I favor conversational or open adoptions. And to Shirley's point, which is a great one, a lot of rescues and rescue-oriented shelters have the most restrictive adoption policies. And the organizations that tend to have open adoptions are more open admission shelters. And I think there's a reason for that, because the rescues and the rescue-oriented shelters don't do the killing. So they're insulated from it. So they can feel okay with doing what they want to do because they don't see the consequences that Shirley mentioned. And that's terrible. And it's definitely a problem. So I would say that you want to do open adoptions, and a lot of rescues, I think, and some rescue-oriented shelters have a hero complex where they have to view the world where everything's a danger, and for them to be the savior, they have to carefully vet all the adopters because they have this distorted perception that the majority of people out there are hate animals and are looking to harm them, when we know it's a very tiny percentage of members of the public that would actually harm a pet. So I think though that's the psychological reasoning behind it too. So so the long story short is open adoptions is the way to go, and unfortunately a lot of rescues and rescue-oriented shelters still fight that tooth and nail.
I really like that point, though. I think because rescues, they don't have to face the same thing that shelters are. I mean, as no-kill advocates, we're known for giving shelters a hard time more than anybody, right? Everyone thinks that's all we do. It's not what we do. That's a really interesting point, because rescues have got to, they have to, we need to help them, I should say, right? Is to see the world bigger than the animal in front of you, right? What we're trying to do is save every healthy or treatable pet. We believe in treating each animal as an individual. That's very important in what we do, but making sure that we're keeping an eye on the ball, which is, as long as we're keeping an animal here and we can't take another one from a shelter, we're part, we have to admit we're part of the problem, and
Hey, David,
And I think the national organization, I'm sorry, Aubrie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, since I stepped on my tongue before, CARE is Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity. And I'd like to include, when we share this video, I'll put a link to their short video they did. It's like 2 minutes long, but it's perfect.
No, please, everyone, please watch it. Go ahead, Alan.
And I was just going to say, national organizations through their funding, and I think Kristen Hassen had mentioned this, that national organizations should be funding more organizations that do open adoptions, and also rescues that offer a guarantee to place all healthy, that do an Austin Pets Alive model, where they commit to pulling all the animals off the euthanasia list of a specific shelter to help the shelter no kill. Because the more rescues are part of the process, where they have skin in the game, meaning that they don't get as much funding if the shelter they're contractually working with kills animals, they get less money, and if they don't kill animals, they get more money. I think that would incentivize some rescues to say, we're part of this process. We're responsible, at least partially, for the killing if we're not doing our job, as opposed to, well, we'll just pick who we want and we'll have a nice Facebook post and feel good about it. But when you have incentives to do adoption processes that save more lives, I think that will push them to do that.
All right, we're out of time, but I have one question, and it's really simple. It's raise your hand. Has anyone here been rejected for their adoption application? Wow. Okay. I realize it's a small unscientific, but 100% of us. And I bet you that we did ultimately get a pet or whatever, because we figured it out and we adopted. But a lot of people wouldn't do what we do, which is keep fighting for the adoption, as opposed to just, screw it, I'm going down
And David, I'll add personally, my wife and I have adopted dozens of cats and dogs out using no application, complete conversational adoptions. Never had a problem with any of the adopters. Almost all of them we see, we get pictures from them all the time. So
all right, well, she's
going to experience.
She's going to need to come on camera sometime, and you guys.
Yeah, she does. She's more personable than me. She does the adoption process.
We're going to have to talk she's going to have to talk just about that, what she does. And we're going to have to tell people, because if we get questions about, well, then how do you do that successfully? Well, she's going to have to come on and tell everybody.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, we got to go. This has been No Kill in Motion. Great conversation, folks. Thank you, Aubrie Kavanaugh from No Kill Huntsville, Alan Rosenberg from the New Jersey Animal Observer, Shirley Marsh from Yes Biscuit. I'm David Smith from No Kill Colorado. We will see you next time.